Let's say you're in the market for a crossover. Let's say you also want something a bit fancier than your average plastic fantastic mall crawler, but you don't want to break the bank. There are a handful of premium tier crossovers available, but now there's a new one. This is the 2017 Buick Envision, and it's meant for the family that has some, but not a ton of coin to drop. It's loaded with technology, and it provides a softer, more pleasurable driving experience through suburbia than many of its competitors. There are a few peccadillos, which I'll explain later, but let's get one thing out of the way first. Yes, it's built in China, so is half the crap in your house. But I can assure you after spending time in the Envision that it's not made of wet tissue paper. It packs the same build quality as any other Buick, which is largely a good thing. The Envision started life as a Chinese market vehicle as well, so of course it would be built there. Kinda makes sense, right? Okay, on with the show. Driving the Envision is quite nice. Buick did a great job with its interior noise mitigation. The drive is nearly Lexus levels of quiet, which is actually high praise. In general, the interior is well laid out, it's easy to access everything, and it feels positively premium. Color me pleasantly surprised. Speaking of pleasant surprises, let's talk about the engine. This Envision features the higher output 2.0-liter turbo 4-cylinder. With 252 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque on tap, acceleration arrives in spades, especially when it's mated with the optional all-wheel drive system. The transmission, on the other hand, is largely invisible, doing its job without making a big deal of it. The suspension smooths out over bumps and doesn't pretend to be a stiff mess, hopping about the road like some German crossover with rocks for dampers. It's actually one of the smoother rides in its segment. And forward thrust aside, the Envision should absolutely appeal to buyers both new and old. That being said, most of my issues with the 2017 Envision actually revolve around its attempts to appeal to buyers of all shapes and sizes. As technology makes its way into every vehicle, Buick is making an earnest attempt to capture younger buyers' attention. But there are still touches of the vintage Buick that appeal to the old guard. For example, there is a nice, but generally unreadable analog clock, and approximately 1 inch to its left is a digital clock! What do you know? 2 clocks! Totally need both. Just beneath that, there's a touchpad that lets you change the temperature and heat or cool the seats. The design is nice and the touchpad element is clever, but in practice it's pretty distracting. It's hard to actually use without taking your full attention off the road, if the touchpad even works when you tap it. The most hilarious vestige of Buick's appeal to old school buyers is the turn signal. The turn signal is loud enough to serve as a metronome for in-car acapella, and the side markers are bright enough to guide wayward ships back to land. At night, it's honestly pretty distracting, even if the goal is to prevent you from leaving the turn signal on for 5 days straight. Since it's a GM product, the Envision is positively lousy with tech. Our tester comes standard with a whole bunch of kit, including lane keep assist, forward collision warning, rear parking sensors, teen driver mode, and a neat little system that gauges your following distance to the next car. Buick MyLink lives inside the 8-inch infotainment touchscreen. It includes Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and GM's always excellent 4G LTE Wi-Fi hotspot, which requires a subscription after a trial period. The infotainment screen is suitably snappy with major functions on a quick access dock across the top of the screen. Navigation inputs can be done with both voice and touch. There's also a secondary information display taking up most of the gauge cluster. You get a traditional speedometer, but it's digital, and you can cycle between different pieces of information to live inside the middle of that pixel circle thingy-majigger. Our tester also included a color head-up display, which was bright and easy to manipulate using the 3 rocker switches to the left of the steering wheel. The EPA estimates the Envision's fuel economy at 20 mpg city and 26 mpg highway. The turbo motor loves to rev, so it'll be a constant battle between forward thrust and any semblance of thrift. If you fancy a light foot though, you should meet and beat the EPA numbers with ease. Competitors abound from Germany to Japan. It rides softer than the BMW X3, its complement of tech is better than the Acura RDX, and it's significantly less expensive than a comparably equipped Mercedes-Benz GLC class. I hate to roll out the tired old Goldilocks analogy, so I won't, but you know what I'm getting at. The price leaves a lot to be desired though. While the Envision starts around $35,000, this tester is the fully loaded Premium 2 model, which runs a shade under 50 grand out the door. Ooh. You can't even get the 2-liter engine without spending $43 at the minimum. But that's the trim I'd recommend. Going for Premium over Premium 2 means you lose ventilated seats, the head-up display, navigation system, HID headlights, and automatic high beams, but you save about $2,600 in doing so. I would also cut out the $1,500 panoramic moonroof because it cuts into rear headroom a bit. While Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are standard with the non-navigation infotainment system, it costs just about $500 to add it to the premium trim, which is what I would recommend. But then again, Apple Maps has never really been my favorite. You can add the $1,500 package that includes adaptive cruise control and autonomous emergency braking if you want a little bit of extra safety, but I wouldn't necessarily call that mandatory. That leaves you with a comfortable family hauler for just under $44,000 before taxes and all of that good stuff. The two-row crossover segment has been thick for some time, so you'd be forgiven for assuming the Envision might not have a place to call its own. But the Envision carves out its own little niche quite nicely with a focus on comfort and tech.